April 3rd, 1996. A remote patch of wilderness in Lincoln, Montana. A team of FBI agents in tactical gear creeps through the dense pine trees surrounding a tiny plywood cabin that looks more like a garden shed than a home. Inside is a man the world has been hunting for 17 years. To the locals, he's just the Hermit of Lincoln, a scruffy, quiet neighbor who rides a bike and grows his own vegetables. To the FBI, he is the Unabomber, the most elusive domestic terrorist in American history. For nearly 2 decades, this man has outsmarted every federal agency, leaving a trail of sophisticated pipe bombs across the country, while leaving behind zero forensic evidence. No fingerprints, no DNA, no witnesses. He's a ghost with an IQ of 167. But as the agents close in to break down the door, the most shocking part isn't how they found him. It's who turned him in. It wasn't a high-tech surveillance satellite or a professional informant. It was a 35,000-word essay and a brother who made the most agonizing phone call of his life. This is the story of Ted Kaczynski, the math prodigy who declared war on the modern world, and the tragic betrayal that finally ended his reign of terror. To understand how a genius ends up in a 10 by 12-foot shack, you have to go back to 1958, Harvard University. Ted is 16 years old. While other teenagers are worrying about prom, Ted is mastering complex mathematical logic. He's a boy among men, socially awkward, and profoundly isolated. It's here that he is recruited for a psychological experiment led by Dr. Henry Murray. For 3 years, Ted is subjected to what many now call ethical torture, intense, humiliating verbal attacks designed to break his psyche under pressure. Some believe this is where the monster was born. By 25, he is the youngest professor of mathematics in the history of UC Berkeley. He's at the pinnacle of the intellectual world. Then, in 1969, without warning, he quits. He walks away from the prestige, the money, and the system he has come to despise. He disappears into the woods of Montana, building a cabin with no electricity and no running water. He wants to live like a pioneer, but the world won't leave him alone. Construction noise from nearby developments and the roar of jet engines overhead begin to feel like a personal assault. Ted decides that the only way to save humanity from the industrial technological system is to start a revolution. But his revolution won't be fought with speeches. It will be fought with wooden gunpowder. May 1978. A package is found in a parking lot at Northwestern University. When a security guard opens it, it explodes. It's the first strike. Over the next 17 years, Ted sends 16 bombs. He targets airlines, computer scientists, and geneticists, the people he believes are building the cage for the human race. He is meticulous. He builds his bombs by hand, even smelting his own metal to ensure no commercial parts can be traced back to a store. He stamps them with the initials FC, Freedom Club. The FBI forms the Unabomber task force, short for University and Airline Bomber. They spend $50 million. They interview thousands. They follow every lead, yet they are no closer to finding him than they were on day one. By 1995, Ted is ready for his masterstroke. He sends a letter to the Washington Post and the New York Times. He makes them a deal. If they publish his 35,000-word manifesto, titled Industrial Society and Its Future, he will stop the bombings. It's a massive gamble. The FBI is divided. Do they negotiate with a terrorist? Ultimately, the Attorney General gives the green light, hoping that someone, somewhere, will recognize the writing style. Thousands of miles away, in a small home in New York, David Kaczynski is reading the newspaper. He's a social worker, a man who prides himself on his empathy. He hasn't seen his brother Ted in years. They had a falling out over Ted's increasingly erratic and hostile letters. As David skims the manifesto, a cold dread begins to settle in his stomach. The phrases are familiar. The obsession with cool-headed logicians, the specific critiques of modern psychology, the punctuation. It sounds exactly like the letters Ted used to send home. David doesn't want to believe it. He spends weeks comparing the manifesto to old family documents in the attic. His wife, Linda, is the one who pushes him. She had never even met Ted, but through David's stories, she suspected the brother in the woods was the man on the news. David, if there's even a chance it's him, and he kills again, that blood is on our hands, she tells him. David is torn between the ultimate loyalty, family, and the lives of strangers. He knows that if he turns Ted in, he is likely sending his own brother to the executioner. He makes a choice. David hires a private investigator to act as a buffer and eventually reaches out to the FBI. He makes them promise two things: anonymity for his family, and that they will seek a life sentence instead of the death penalty. The FBI agrees, but the promise is fragile. On that morning in April 1996, the world changes. When the agents pull Ted out of the cabin, he looks like a wild man. His hair is matted, his clothes are stained with soot, and his eyes are filled with a mixture of shock and fury. Inside the cabin, they find the holy grail of evidence. They find a live bomb under his bed, ready to be mailed. They find his journals where he meticulously documented every crime, even expressing disappointment when a bomb failed to kill its target. They find the original typewriter used to write the manifesto. The genius had been caught, not by a mistake in his bombs, but by the one thing he couldn't control: his own voice. The trial is a circus. Ted's lawyers want to plead insanity to save him from the death penalty. Ted is outraged. To him, being labeled insane is a bigger insult than being called a killer. He believes his ideas are the only sane thing in a mad world. He tries to fire his lawyers. He even tries to take his own life in his cell. Eventually, he accepts a plea deal: life in prison without the possibility of parole. David Kaczynski's life is never the same. The FBI breaks their promise of anonymity, and within days the media is swarming his house. He becomes the man who snitched on the Unabomber. He spends years trying to reconcile his love for the brother he grew up with and the monster that brother became. He eventually takes the $1 million reward money and, after taxes and legal fees, distributes it to the victims and their families. It's a gesture of penance for a crime he didn't commit. Ted is sent to ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, the most secure prison in the world. He spends 23 hours a day in a concrete box. He continues to write letters to followers and researchers, never once expressing remorse for the lives he ended or the families he shattered. He sees himself as a martyr, a man who sacrificed everything to warn the world of a coming catastrophe. In the decades that follow, a strange thing happens. As the world becomes more digital, more tracked, and more isolated by technology, Ted's manifesto begins to find a new audience online. People who feel crushed by the system start to echo his words, if not his actions. But they often forget the reality of his revolution. The high school students, the secretaries, and the fathers who were just opening their mail when their lives were blown apart. June 2023. Ted Kaczynski is found unresponsive in his cell at the Federal Medical Center in North Carolina. He is 81 years old. The man who tried to stop the future is finally gone, but the shadow he cast remains. He was a man who had everything, the intellect to change the world for the better, but chose to burn it down instead. And in the end, his unbreakable logic was broken by a brother who chose humanity over blood. David Kaczynski often reflects on the day of the arrest. He remembers the brother who taught him how to identify wildflowers and stars. He remembers the brother who was his hero. To the world, Ted was a monster or a genius. To David, he was just a lost soul who couldn't find his way back from the dark. Ted Kaczynski thought he could stop the machine by attacking its parts. He learned too late that the most powerful thing in the world isn't a bomb or a computer. It's the truth, and sometimes the truth comes from the people who love you the most. Think about the manifesto for a second. 35,000 words designed to prove that the individual is powerless against the collective. Yet, it was one individual, David, making one decision that stopped the Unabomber in his tracks. Ted's philosophy failed its first real-world test. He underestimated the power of a single person's conscience. Even in his final years, Ted remained a figure of intense study. Psychiatrists debated his diagnosis. Was it paranoid schizophrenia or just a profound malignant narcissism? But for the victims, the diagnosis didn't matter. What mattered was the silence, the end of the mail bomb era. There's a final irony to Ted's life. He hated technology because he believed it stripped away our privacy and our identity. Yet the only reason we know his name today is because he used that very technology, the printing press and the mass media, to broadcast his ego to the world. He wanted to be a ghost, but he couldn't resist the urge to be a legend. In the end, Ted Kaczynski died in a room surrounded by the very things he hated: medical monitors, electric lights, and the hum of a modern facility. He lived as a hermit, but he died as a ward of the state he tried to destroy. The genius, who thought he could outrun history, was eventually caught by his own handwriting and a brother who couldn't stay silent. David Kaczynski still speaks at events about the death penalty and mental health. He doesn't shy away from his past. He carries the weight of Ted's legacy with a quiet dignity. He knows that most people will only ever remember the bombs, but he remembers the boy, and maybe that's the most tragic part of the whole story. Not the 17 years of hunting or the $50 million spent, but the fact that a brother had to destroy his family to save the world. It's a choice most of us will never have to make, and one that David Kaczynski has to live with every single day. The man who was betrayed by his own brother, or the man who was saved from becoming an even greater monster? That's a question only history can answer. As the cabin was eventually hauled away on a flatbed truck to be displayed in a museum, it stood as a monument to a failed philosophy, a small dark box where a brilliant mind rotted away. Ted Kaczynski thought he was the architect of a new world. Turns out he was just a man in a shed, waiting for the one person who knew him best to finally speak up. The machine is always running, but every now and then, someone throws a wrench in the gears, sometimes for the worse, and sometimes just in time. Remember, the most dangerous thing about a genius isn't their brain, it's their conviction. When you believe you're the only one who knows the truth, the rest of the world just becomes an obstacle. Ted Kaczynski spent his life trying to remove those obstacles. He ended up becoming his own. The world is a big place, but it's smaller than you think when you're looking for someone, especially when they leave their heart on the page. The man who outsmarted every agency was eventually outsmarted by the one thing he didn't account for: love. And that is the ultimate checkmate. Every intelligence agency in the world has its limits. Every forensic lab has its boundaries. But a brother's memory, that's a database you can't hack and a trail you can't erase. That is how the Unabomber was finally brought to justice. In a world that feels increasingly like the one Ted feared, automated, watched, and fast, perhaps the real takeaway isn't his manifesto. It's the story of the man who read it and chose to do the right thing, no matter the cost. That's the real genius in this story. And it didn't require an IQ of 167 to figure out. It just required a phone call. One simple, devastating phone call. And with that, the 17-year hunt was over. The cabin is empty. The bombs are gone. But the questions Ted raised about our relationship with technology are more relevant now than ever. We just have to find a better way to answer them than he did. One last look at that cabin. 10 by 12 feet. It's hard to believe so much fear came out of such a small space. But it's even harder to believe that a life so full of potential ended up there. Don't let your genius become your prison. Use it to build, not to break.